Coming to you from the Mignoni Center for Career Success at Harvard University, this is the Career 411 podcast. Please listen in if you're looking for insider perspectives and insights on the job market, careers, and recruiting. My name is Manny Contaminolis, and welcome to the show. Welcome back for the second part of my discussion with Lindsey Pollak.
The companies that said, well, we're just going to go back to the way things were, or the individuals that said, I'm going to go back to that, are missing this opportunity to explore career choices and workplace choices and situations that we kind of never did before. And I think the companies that are winning talent and the people who are thriving are the ones who said, maybe we could do something just completely different. Does that make any sense, or am I all over the place?
No. I think you're absolutely right. Like, just thinking out of the box, that this paradigm shift is, I think, absolutely fascinating. And your comment about that reminds me of something else that I'm seeing, and I wonder what your take is on it. I've been saying quite a bit that your strengths and your skills are more important than the schools you attended, and that your competencies and curricula, your competencies and capabilities are more important than the curricula that you pursued. And I'm seeing now more and more this kind of sense on the hiring side of, like, okay, I get where you went. I understand the courses that you took. I can look at the course descriptions as well as you can. I've taken a look at your resume, but trying to get at this, okay, so what meaning have you derived from all these experiences? What can you do, and what do you want to do, and how can you help me understand that? So I'm wondering, are you seeing this? Does that observation resonate with you? And if so, what are the kinds of things maybe we could be doing better to help, certainly young professionals think about their early career success?
It's such a great way of framing it. And as you know, I am a very proud brand ambassador for Capfinity, which, for those who don't know, is a company that is based on the idea of hiring and managing talent based on strengths or skills. So rather than looking at a GPA or at test scores, that you figure out and assess what people's strengths are, the things they're good at and the things they enjoy, and you help them brush up on the things that they are not as strong in, and you map a job or a project to the skills that are needed to complete it. So I think the danger of my vision of these balls in the air and that is that it's chaos, right? And what skills or strengths do is they give you a language to figure out a path through this new environment. So rather than saying, well, I have a really high GPA, I'm going to become an investment banker, you say, well, I really like to sit with a project until it's completed. What are the jobs that would be a good fit for me? So I think it's an incredibly valuable way to change things. So what does that look like in practicality? Number one, if you're writing a job posting, it's not 7 years of experience. It's, here are the skills that this job requires, and show us that you have demonstrated those particular skills. If you are a student like me who is undecided, you say, well, what are your natural strengths? And not surprisingly, my number one skill in the Capfinity strengths profile is narrator. I like to tell stories. I like to write stories. I like to give speeches. Well, that would have been really helpful to know 20 years ago when I was looking for jobs that had that skill. Instead, I said, this was my GPA and this was my major. And that wasn't necessarily the best choice. So it's giving us, I think, another language to have these conversations, both from the employer side, here are the skills that this job requires, and from an employee or a student side, which is, this is what I'm able to do. And a third piece I want to throw in is something I learned from you, Manny, when I interviewed you for my book, The Remix, that you talked about students as learners, that it's not about a certain age, it's not about a point in time. And I think the idea of lifelong learning and always wanting to add to your skill set and always wanting to adapt to the environment we're in. I think anyone who wants to succeed today has to position themselves as wanting to always be learning and always be curious. And so I think that sort of pulls together the skills piece with how we succeed into the future. Your skills are not static.
I love this idea of lifelong learning, which I think is one of those real challenges if you think about it, right? The ability to have that kind of self-awareness, to be able to, get feedback from others, to kind of envision yourself doing something else, and either have the ability to analyze where those gaps are and where you need to fill those gaps, or be receptive to others who can, help guide you in that place. So I think that really resonates with me in terms of the notion of how you can be successful over time. And that harkens back to that, this whole idea that it is the long game, right? Not that first step. I think the other thing that you said with regard to the language of skills, the language of strengths and so forth, also begs the other question. When you have the language, you can tell your story. And I think that's where I see incredibly capable people that really struggle to tell their story. And I think perhaps this new language of skills and strengths and capabilities and competencies, if we really focus more on it, will just make it that much easier to tell a story. Well, at least let's hope so, because I know you and I are both storytellers at heart.
Well, I'm reflecting on your first question to me, which was, what's your story? What I didn't tell you is, of course, I considered law school. People said, oh, you're a good writer. You're a good speaker. You should go to law school. And I went to a law firm and I looked around. I was like, ooh, this doesn't feel comfortable to me. There's a lot of arguing. There's a lot of conflict. I don't like that. I don't talk about the LSAT course that I took. I don't tell you everything about what I did. In retrospect, I think it was Steve Jobs who said, the dots connect in retrospect. The hard part is knowing that whatever path you're on, some of those dots are not going to connect. My law school dots didn't connect. I don't tell you about that now, but for those who are, on the earlier end of their career, some of your dots are not going to connect. I started a podcast. I absolutely admire you for starting this one, and I'm so happy to be a guest. It wasn't for me. I didn't like being the host. I like to be the guest, but I tried it. And so I think the other thing that's really important to lifelong learning and integrating your skills into your career is you're never going to know if something's a fit until you actually try it. And I think I wasted a lot of years. My only regret about my career is the things I thought about for years. And once I tried them, I either liked them or I didn't. But if I had tried them sooner, I would have gotten past that and moved on. So I think sometimes we spend too much time in our heads trying to figure stuff out and tell this story to ourselves. Whereas if you just try it and take the LSAT or try the podcast, you kind of get it over with and figure out which way you want to go. So I think action is another really important piece of the story.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to tie that all together. I can't leave any discussion with you without talking at least a little bit about the whole generational factor. And in particular, I'm really going to take you right to the meat of this, right? In the sense that you've written, you've studied, you've researched, you've done tremendous work in this understanding the impact of generations in the workplace. And among the complicating elements of all this is taking the workplace as a microcosm, right? And with different generations, but also in different parts of the world, in different kinds of industries, and also, as you've talked about it, often the intersectionality of not only those kinds of variables, but also race, gender, ethnicity. So I would love if you can give us, that sense of what are the real kind of takeaways that you've learned as a result of your work in this space, and what advice would you have, for a young professional, who's entering the workforce now and who's thinking about these things, especially if they've read your work, including in particular that I would highly recommend, Recalculating, Navigate Your Career Through the Changing World of Work, which is your latest book, by the way, and I think is a must read for any young professional, frankly. But give us a sense of what that really means for that young professional when they enter that, that first job.
So this is kind of an example of my own pivot and curiosity, which is, as you said, I was one of the first to be a millennial career expert. I'm an Xer, so millennials were younger than I am, but I did that for about 10 years. And it was audiences who would start to say in my workshops, Lindsey, it's really great you talk about millennials, but what about everybody else? And I sort of said, well, you're right. I can't just talk about millennials and not talk about everybody else. And so I started doing a deeper dive into all the generations. And what I found is a couple of things. As a Gen Xer, when I entered the workforce in the 90s, it was totally dominated by baby boomers. And I don't think we acknowledge enough that baby boomers probably were the dominant generation of the workforce for about half a century. And so it's not until the millennials, who are a very large generation as well, that we even started talking about this, because Xers like me, we just adapted to the boomer way of doing things. Nobody adapted for us. And it's actually just sheer numbers that millennials were big enough as a generation to start to challenge the way that boomers did things. Speaking of the boomers, they have worked longer and later into their lives than any generation before. So we have more Americans over the age of 85 working today than ever before. That's the traditionalist era. So you have millennials and Gen Zs coming in, but traditionalists and boomers and Xers are working a lot longer too. So it used to be sort of unique if you worked with someone 30 years older than you. Now it's completely an average day. And so it's a new skill set to build. And my absolute favorite advice for anyone in the workplace, but particularly if you're just starting out, there was an entrepreneur named Gina Pell, and she coined this term perennial. Mm-hmm. And a perennial is someone who is the age they are, whatever that is, but they do two things. They know their history and they keep up with the times. So if you're young, learn your history. What was your industry like before you joined? Why is your company the way it is? What is the history of diversity at your company? What is the history of women in leadership at your organization? So add in that intersectionality piece. And if you are on the older end, share that history and your experience, whatever it is based on your identity, with people younger. And you got to learn how to use Zoom. You have to learn what AI and crypto are. You've got to keep up with what's going on. So nobody gets off easy, right? Whoever you are, you have to look at kind of the other side of the coin in order to be able to interact with everybody. And a simple way to do this is, I always recommend something I try to do, which is to have what I call a multi-generational board of advisors. So instead of having one mentor who's older than you, have a whole team of people as if you're a company with a board, and make sure that you have people in your life who you talk to on a regular basis of each of the 5 generations that are out there, so that you're not spending all your time with people who are just like you. And that's why families are multi-generational environments, because we all naturally know people of different ages, but we now have to take that into a workplace context, the normalcy of hanging out with people who are not exactly your age. So I think exposure is important. And I think, to your point, it's the same as the diversity conversation. If I only hung out with white, cisgender, Jewish women, I don't think I'm going to have a lot of perspective on the rest of the world than if I have a really diverse group of people.
This concept of the perennial is, I think, amazing. And now it's something I always think about perennials as what I put in my garden, right? But now it has a whole new meaning and perspective. I think the other thing that I seem to recall that you did that was, I think, leading up to this was, I remember you said that you hired someone, instead of thinking about mentoring and looking for people more experienced with you, you found somebody that was kind of your mentor who was younger than you to help keep you honest and understanding about the trends. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh my gosh, I have a social media mentor, right, who's a teenager, because I have no idea what's cool and not cool and, all those sorts of things. I was putting periods at the end of my text messages, like, absolutely not. That's a terrible thing to do, right? According to the younger generations. If I want to engage with people of all generations, I need to understand them. And I think that the model for that, as far as I know, is Fabrizio Freda, who's the CEO of Estee Lauder Companies. He's a remarkably successful global CEO of a cosmetics empire. He has what they call a reverse mentor, which is a first-year employee of his company, and once a quarter they go shopping for makeup. Because what could be more important to the CEO of Estee Lauder than to understand how an early career professional buys makeup? And he respects the fact, and I think really importantly, uses the word mentor, right? I think that's what's important, is not just, hey, teenager, can you help me fix my phone? It's, can you mentor me on this? I know another manager who's a baby boomer, and he always goes to his junior team every week and says, put a new app on my phone. Show me what you're using, right? There's so many different ways to do this. And what it does is it says, I'm not better because I'm older or more experienced, right? We're just different in what we bring to the table. I think it goes back to the Capfinity strengths model, which is you have a strength in understanding what technology is cool. I might have a strength in helping you with a difficult career conversation. Those both have value, right? And so when I ask someone younger for advice or guidance, I really deliberately use that word mentor. Thank you for bringing it up. I think it's so important. And I think for those who are on campus, what could be more important? I mean, there's very few multi-generational environments like a campus where the students are everywhere. So I think if you're working in higher education and you're not tapping into that wisdom of the students, I think you're missing out on a huge perennial opportunity.
Right. Back to the perennial. And I think you're right. This idea of, constantly being open and wanting to understand, I think that's a big part of it, right? You have to have that desire. You have to have that openness to those ideas. So again, I think that's an important lesson that, I would certainly not want people to forget as they're hearing this perspective from you. So I have one last question for you that I've decided is going to be a kind of regular feature for all my guests. And that is, you've experienced many things, and I just so appreciate your openness and your ability to kind of share all of that with us on the show. But I would like to know, for you, what was the best career advice you ever got? And there's a part 2 to that question. And that is, what is the best advice you would offer to anyone else? What are those 2 go-to things that you say, boy, that piece of advice I got was a game changer for me, and it might be the exact same thing you would share with others, but let us in on your secret.
Oh, I love this. Okay. So I think they're going to be different, but I think they're both valuable. The best piece of advice I ever got was from a Rotarian when I was on my Rotary scholarship to graduate school, who said to me, and it's so simple, but he said, keep meeting people. It's all about people. He said, everything you're going to do in your career is about the people. And when I think about, people ask me, how have you built your business? How have you written books? People. I take people out to lunch. I ask people for advice. I hang out with people. I text people. It's so much easier, I think, than a lot of people think. It's about the relationships. And, during COVID, all of my business went away. I've been very open about how terrifying it was. In March 2020, I went from a full speaking calendar to 0. And do you know how I got out of it? I started calling people and saying, hey, I'm not sure what to do. This has never happened before. Do you know anybody who's looking for a speaker? And that started to build up. So instead of sort of doing a new marketing campaign or anything, I just started calling people. So I think one is ask for help, reach out to people. The best advice I like to give is based on, again, my own mistakes in my career, which was spending way too much time in my head. So whenever anybody says, should I do this? Should I do that? I say, do it, try it. Get out of your head and get onto your to-do list. Don't think about it. Take one step in any direction and you'll learn from that. So I think it's about action and people.
Amazing. I think that if people who are listening to this, I hope will remember those 2 particular things, because I couldn't agree more that those can be career game changers, and clearly they were for you.
You're one of my people, and I'm grateful for you.
Lindsey, I just want to thank you so much for being a guest today. As always, you have amazing insights, amazing perspectives, and you share them so well and so effectively, and I'm sure the listening audience feels the same way. So let me thank you again, wish you the very best in all your endeavors. Keep writing those books, keep talking to us, and keep sharing your insights and passions with us. Thanks so much, Lindsey. Such a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
From the Mignoni Center for Career Success at Harvard University, this has been the Career 411 podcast. My name is Manny Contamanolis, your host, and our guest today has been Lindsey Pollak. You can find the show transcript and other episodes on the Mignoni Center for Career Success website. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate the show on Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcast. You can also connect with us on Instagram @HarvardMCS. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you on the next episode.